When something goes really wrong in your life, whether it's losing a loved one, whether it's job loss, whether it's getting kicked off the mountain in some way, or you're in the NFL or whatever, and that ends, you get to find out who is actually real in your life and who's not. Because when you're on top, there's a lot of hanger-arounders, and you don't know necessarily who's hanging around you because it gets them something versus who wants to be around you because they're truly a friend.
Yes.
When something goes wrong, you get to realize who was truly a friend and who was just around you because it got them something, positional power, potential, notoriety, whatever it may be.
Hey, guys, it is Allison. I am the host of your show, Allison Answers Mission Awake. I cannot wait to sit down with you today and go over how we are going to crush the mediocrity in your life that has been plaguing our society since the beginning of time. I cannot wait to have a real deal conversation that includes intelligence, fun, excitement, and real actionable steps to make a real difference in the life that you're living now and making it into something you can be damn proud of and excited to live. Sit down, put on your damn seatbelt, and get ready for the ride of your life. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Allison from Allison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. I have Josh Kosnick on today, and I'm really, really thrilled to have him. I feel like he is like a dark horse, someone that I've seen in so many different business settings, and I've always admired who he was, but I never really understood the depth of who this man actually is. And from, being in different work environments with him, I have come to realize this guy is an incredible resource, an incredible, impactful person that will make a difference in your life just by listening to him. He has a wealth of knowledge on so many levels, emotionally, spiritually, physically, in terms of being an entrepreneur, leadership. He just has so much to offer. So I'm going to read a formal bio, but I have so much to gush over this man over. So we'll get to the real bio now. Josh Kosnick is the owner and founder of Kairos Coaching and Consulting. He is a veteran entrepreneur and a leadership coach, mentor, and consultant by trade. Before starting his leadership consulting business, Josh spent 17 years in the financial industry. He achieved great success as a producer, a recruiter, a developer, and at the age of 35, Josh sold his wealth management practice and was appointed the leader of a firm of over 100 advisors. Then at the age of 40, he sold that thriving business, which allowed him the time to focus and dedicate himself to advancing his legacy. It's really cool the way this guy is, I have to say. When I read this, it just reminds me of who he is. Though Josh had an impactful run in the financial industry, his leadership skills are what separated Josh as one of the kind among his peers and competitors. Josh's strength in leadership lies in breaking down barriers that stifle people's success. Those include establishing a strong why, believing in others when they don't believe in themselves, staying grounded and being a rock for those that he mentors, continuing to learn and grow, leading based on his value system and not compromising. One of Josh's unique traits is that he passionately embraces the value of personal growth. Josh believes there is always room for improvement and understands that to be the best for his team, clients, and community, a dedication to continued education is key. More importantly, Josh is adamant about sharing knowledge with as many people as possible. He lives by the motto to inspire people and impact lives in all areas of his life, personally and professionally. Outside of being a business owner, Josh is a family man who is just as impactful at home as he is at work. His wife, Jenna, and their 4 young children, Ella, Harper, Kensington, and Camden, attend Black Hawk Church. When Josh is away from work, he enjoys hunting with his dad, spending time at the family cabin compound, and cheering on the Wisconsin Badgers and Chicago Bears. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring Josh on, but before I even do that, I'm going to a little bit of pre-frame what you can expect here. I'm actually having Josh on as like a student. So my quest right now is I'm here to share all of his great knowledge with you, but also I'm here asking questions that I want to know the answer to. So, a regular interview, you'd go through the things that you think your audience wants. But I think what I'm going to want to understand and learn from Josh are so many of the things that you're also going to want to learn. So I'm going to talk to him as much as I can, as long as he'll stay on the show, about his leadership skills, about his ability to organize and run these very, very large businesses and be able to continue to grow physically, emotionally, spiritually, his Christian background, his really amazing parenting. And, he is a great husband. So, anything we can learn from him and glom it up and apply it to our own lives, listen for the pearl. Listen for the wisdom that you can put in your toolkit that's going to change your life. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to fill up my, I'm going to, it's like I'm going to the buffet line. I'm going to throw as much stuff as I can from Josh in there today. So do the same. Here he is. Hey, guys, how are you today? It is Allison from Allison Answers and Lager Counseling Services. As I mentioned previously, that this is Josh Kosnick, and I'm going to share a little bit about Josh. I'm going to gush a little bit because it's important, I think, to share for you, Josh, the reason that you're actually here and how it took so long for me to invite you on the show. Because when I met Josh for the very first time, we were at an event, an Arate event, and it was only a few months after my husband died by suicide. And I was disoriented. I don't even know how I was even there, honestly. And, we're dressed up and there's just like a lot, and it was a great experience, but I was just like kind of blurred. And Josh saw me. We belonged to the same group, Arate, and he saw me. He saw my vulnerability. He was able to, and he asked me directly about my situation. And usually that doesn't happen when somebody experiences a tragedy because people want to avoid that. But the reason that I even bring that up is because because that kind of eclipsed me knowing all the other stuff that Josh has to offer. So like I wrote a bunch of stuff down here because there's just, this man is someone. So I just want to really pre-frame this for you guys. I want you to hear what's going to happen as you listen to this show. What's going to happen is I'm coming here as a student. This is not for me like a typical thing. I have things that I want to learn and I'm here to do that. And I'm asking that as you're listening here, that you just take in Josh's wisdom, because I consider him an expert in leadership, discipline, family values, focus, overcoming really incredible hardships, because he also shared in the tragic loss of somebody who died by suicide too. So, and very, very many things that this man has climbed out of to become the man that he is today and doing the hard work and the discipline. So what I'm hoping to do is to ask just the right questions. So you're going to learn about leadership. You're going to learn about family, spirituality, connection with human beings, vulnerability. So without any more of my further ado, I want to just thank you so much for being here. And I really mean it. I'm gonna learn. That's my plan. Putting on my glasses.
Well, it's good. I'm humbled to
Yes.
be here. And I'm actually a little emotional because I can remember that moment vividly. And what I saw was someone that had a deep pain it was a shared experience, right? Like I was able to see it because I had been through it.
Yes.
And not not a spouse, but a very dear loved one. And I could see that there was a fog there and that someone needed a hug and to be seen.
Okay, so we're going to take off here because honestly, that's like a level of wisdom that I think comes through those difficult times, right, Josh? It's like we can't really give what we don't have. And you were able to see because you had been there, and that's such a big part of so many things that we do, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a memorable experience, and life happens for us, not to us, as one of our great mentors Ed always says, and it's true. We're best equipped to help that previous version of ourselves, and I was just a few years ahead of the game of having lost a dear loved one and being able to process that grief. And you're right that so many people are scared to approach a
Yes.
vulnerable situation like that because they don't think they have the right words or don't know what to say. And a brilliant person, and I think it's one of the most underrated careers on the planet, is a funeral home director. A
Wow. Yeah.
brilliant person told me, so when we were going through that situation, this caring, loving man who was dealing with our deepest grief sat in the room with us as we're planning the funeral. And he says, guys, there's going to be a lot of people here that say some things that may not sit well with you. They don't have the right words. They don't know what to say. And they may say something that's off-putting. Just know that if they're there, they care.
Mhm.
And I was like, wow.
It's really good.
And it was needed to be heard because there were some things that, like said that just go, oof, that didn't feel
Right.
good.
Right.
But we
Yeah.
had to remember they were there and they cared in our deepest grief.
That's so cool. And I can't this my funeral director from those years ago asked me to be on his podcast to talk about grief. He just asked me. It's so funny that you bring it up. Not funny, haha, but he was so meaningful in our lives. He was such a good man. And I hear you. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyhow, let's talk about how you've overcome stuff in your life to become the man that you are, because I want to talk about all those five bridges and all your expertise. So tell us like
Well,
how you got here, Josh.
so I started off as an entrepreneur at 24 years old, financial advisor, didn't know anything about being an entrepreneur, just learned like the rest of us learned, trial by fire. And I was a good producer. I was a great at talking to people, and I was a mess at everything else, like true visionaries. And so I became a boss at 26 of my first employee. Happened to hire a great one right out of the gates, which doesn't always happen. And she was my right hand for a number of years, and we helped grow the thing. And I was able to sell that at age 36 and bought a large firm and succeeded my father in that. And now the reason I say it that way is because I was chosen by a Fortune 100 company to succeed him. Not that he wouldn't have chosen me, but I had to prove not only to him, but also to a very large corporation that I was the right person for the job. And so I bought him out and sent him off into retirement, which was, a dream for him and me, and ran that firm of 250 people, grew it by 30% a year, managed over $4 billion of assets. Great big firm, great big responsibilities, lots of stress. That's where all these gray hairs came from. And and it's like those president pictures before and after, right? You take like, oh, this perfectly dark beard
But
has
is that
now got all
true?
the,
Is
oh my
that
gosh, it's
true
true.
that we turn
Have you
gray from
seen
that?
from stress? Oh, for sure. Now, yes, it comes with age as well, but from stress, I think gray hairs definitely comes into play. At least for me, it did. But now I get to rock this salt and pepper beard. But I sold that 3 years ago, but it wasn't my own volition. So the stress came. I had a great team, and the people ask me all the time, like, do I miss that? I miss my people. I don't miss what I was doing. I preface it that way because I love what I'm doing now, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I had an employee that was a very talented employee that had some character flaws. I kept chalking them up to immaturity, and I had developed plenty of young men and women out of immaturity into being mature humans and adults and business owners. So partly my own hubris and partly just not recognizing the signs, I kept chalking his character flaws up to immaturity. And it came to a head as I started pinning this person into a corner because they were a full-blown narcissist. And as you know, in therapy and you deal with narcissists, when you back them into a corner, they really scrap and claw because their whole survival is in their own being and their own, they've learned very well to adapt to society and survive through some of their own pains. So instead of actually changing, he chooses to use the kind of political narrative that we're in right now and sue me for discrimination. And in that, the company, because I had them involved the whole time with some of the issues that were going on, they knew that there was no racism or discrimination going on. In fact, I had promoted this person. There was a big article done that he was the first African American promoted at such a young age to the position that he was at. And yet somehow I was holding him back in his head. And it wasn't that I was holding him back, it was that I was trying to help him change as a human being because there was some harassment issues that he was causing at the office. There was other client issues that we're facing, and we were trying to change that to help him grow as a human and also keep the reputation of the firm intact. And so 3 months after he sued me, they got their ducks in a row. I get a call on June 16th, 2021. I go to the Marriott to meet the executive vice president. And as soon as my butt hit the chair, he says, Josh, there's no easy way to say this. We're moving in a different direction. You're no longer the managing partner. And so I take a deep breath and, everything's foggy at that point. I'm like, what happened? Like, why? That was the only thing I could muster. Because we're growing by 30%, like everything is going so well business-wise, and they didn't give me an answer. He didn't give me an answer. And he said, you can sign this form or you can sign this form. And I said, oh, I've trusted you guys enough. I'm not signing anything until I speak to my attorney. And so I walk out, my emails immediately shut off, so I can't communicate with my people. And there's security at my office that I own the lease on, 35,000 square feet, in case I showed up and was a problem. So can't get to the office, can't collect my belongings, can't talk to my people. I'm left to go home, and I made it about 2 minutes down the road. I'm 8 minutes between my house and the Marriott. Made it 2 minutes down the road and pulled over into a park and ride and was just crying. I couldn't see. I was just bawling. And there's just so much confusion, betrayal, shame, guilt, all the different feelings. And I walk into the house and my wife meets me at the door because it's really odd for me to be home at 9 in the morning. And I'm like, I'm done. And, immediately through her mind's like, what are we going to do? She's a stay-at-home mom. We got 4 young kids. She didn't know how well we were financially because I handled all that. And I said, it's not the question I ask right now. And, I immediately going down in the basement, I'm curled up in the fetal position, just crying. And, a lot comes after that. And now I'm in 2 legal battles, one with the civil lawsuit that was filed against me, and the other was negotiating my exit with the company, which they had to buy me out. And we figured that out over 6 months. But the beauty in that 6 months was this. Now I can say it's a beauty. At the time, it was not beautiful.
Yes.
I immediately made 2 decisions. One, that I was going to take the summer off and not make any immediate decisions about my future. And I was going to spend that time with my kids and my wife. And that was the immediate decision I made. And the biggest thing was like, it seemed to be easy. Most others may not have thought it'd be easy, but I was like, when am I ever going to get that time back? Like, when would I ever get that opportunity to just take the summer off and spend that with my kids and wife? And so I did that. But what it did was also allow me to pause and reflect and plan and process. And I had a lot of processing to do because I had built my entire career, my entire business with this one company. And I had been around that company since birth. Their annual meetings were my family reunions. Oh my God. I'd been to 40 straight of them. And so my 41st would have been my 41st. I was no longer there. And so all my traditions, all my trophies, all my accolades, all my positions, all everything except for my family was taken from me. But that's all I needed was my family. And it makes you realize at the end too, is like one of the other gifts that came from it was you find out who's real in your life and who's not.
Yes.
When something goes really wrong in your life, whether it's losing a loved one, whether it's job loss, whether it's getting kicked off the mountain in some way, or you're in the NFL or whatever, and that ends, you get to find out who is actually real in your life and who's not. Because when you're on top, there's a lot of hanger-arounders. And you don't know necessarily who's hanging around you because it gets them something versus who wants to be around you because they're truly a friend.
Yes.
When something goes wrong, you get to realize who was truly a friend and who was just around you because it got them something, positional power, potential, notoriety, whatever it may be.
Yes.
And so that was another gift. But in that 6 months, I was able to process and then also dream about the future. And so I took that time. And although I didn't want it to go 6 months with that legal battle, just negotiating the exit, it was hard. Like the hardest piece is like I'm a type A hard charging alpha type of male. Like I need to be doing something of value with my life. And at that time, I was handcuffed. My hands were tied. I had to posture because my biggest leverage against them was that I would just go to another firm, get recruited by another financial firm, and take all my advisors and start over.
Wow.
And completely ruin that other business that they just kicked me out of. So that was my leverage. And so I couldn't just say, okay, I'm going to this firm or I'm starting this business or I'm starting in the coaching world without losing all that leverage. So I'm handcuffed negotiating this exit, but it allowed me to process what I wanted to do next, process the grief, process all the betrayal, process all the emotions that I had, and then go, okay, what does life look like now? And do I want to start over? Do I want to do what I was just doing? So I created this really fancy T-chart, just drew a line down the center of a paper. And at the top on the left, I wrote, what did I love about what I was doing? And what did I hate on the right?
Love it. Yeah.
And so then I made that list. And then at the bottom of it, I said, this question didn't come from any coaching or anything. It just really came from God or just internally. Like, what if I could create a world that I just did all the stuff that I love?
Yes.
And I leaned into that and I leaned into impact. So coaching and developing people, working with leadership teams, speaking, having an impact where I can actually change people's lives and not deal with compliance, supervision, HR, FINRA, the SEC. Like
Yes.
those things I absolutely hated.
Yes.
So getting rid of those. And now I really enjoy working with leaders and leadership teams and helping them solve their issues and not have to deal with those issues myself.
I don't blame you. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is like a little bit of an odd question, but there's a couple of things that stood out to me when you just shared that. I just want to tell you that like my eyes just filled up with tears. Like I've heard you share that story, but not in that way. And I really heard it differently, just because I'm thinking of you as trying to help to develop that man. Like, and as a leader, you needed to correct or whatever it is you needed to do, right? But then he couldn't understand it because of his illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then what I feel like that is in and of itself, so many people struggle with that. Even as a leader, I know for me, I don't want to say things to people because somehow I feel that they have to understand my point of view in order for me to correct them, right? So it will make me pull back. But you see, that's like an emotional thing on my end. So when you said it, I'm like, you took the heat of actually something like what maybe my fear, but not realizing it in such an extreme way. But that is such a growing period that you had to go through then to be able to train other people to face that kind of stuff, right?
Well, it happened for me so that I could help others with going through that. Like, think about that. So I sat in a 9-hour deposition with this man. It was the first time I saw him since he sued me. 9 hours. I wear this Whoop band, right? Typical workout for me, I have a strain of about 6 on Whoop. For anyone that wears Whoop or
Yeah.
Aura Ring, like my strain's about 6.
Mm-hmm.
It's not too strong. I do a lot of weightlifting. I'm in good shape, so my strain level is not too high. That day, sitting in a chair across from this person that's utterly lying under oath, my strain was at 14.6.
Wow. Yes.
And so you can have all these feelings about like I remember telling Andy Frisella the story when we were in St. Louis, and I was asking the question about how I should pursue this lawsuit. And you could see him fidgeting in his chair, like he was utterly uncomfortable and pissed off for me.
Yes.
And like a lot of people have that reaction, like how have you gone about this? Like look, it would take so much more energy and mental capacity for me to hold a grudge against this person than it would for me just to let it go. So I actually went through 2 levels of this. I actually was able to have a lot of empathy for him because he's essentially an 8-year-old in an adult body, a hurt, damaged 8-year-old in an adult body.
Yes.
I was able to have a lot more empathy for him. And what I found was I wasn't having enough empathy for myself. And so I had to go through like 2 levels of, okay, I got to the forgiveness part with him and I have an empathy for him. And then I had to get to a level of having enough empathy for myself and what I was going through and to kind of forgive and move on from all the stuff internally as well.
How do you how would you suggest someone does that if they're a leader and they're asking, they're feeling resentment, or the person's not hearing them, like, that sort of thing can really build up, especially
Well, I
you're
can
saying
say,
a narcissist. I mean, it is literally impossible to interact in a way that can work.
well, and narcissists are brilliant people. They're truly brilliant, and they navigate through our society in a complete survival mode, and they can trick you for quite a while. And he tricked me for quite a while. This is a person I gave $10,000 worth of custom suits out of my closet when he was just getting started, because he couldn't afford it at the time, and I was pouring into him. Like he sat at my dinner table with my family, like we were at birthday parties together. Like he navigated that very, very well, and that's what was hiding, and I cared about him. And this is the part that leaders go through, is like, okay, so are we never going to love again because that one person burnt us? Are we never going to extend grace to people because that one person burnt us? Are we never going to hire another person again because that one guy was an asshole,
Right,
and took advantage of us? Like that, it just limits and brings a scarcity mentality to our world instead of an abundance.
yes.
It's like, yes, there are shitty people on this planet, but there's far more good people.
Yes.
And so we just learn and get better at. Now I've become, one of the other gifts that he's given me, plus a couple other people that were there, so I can spot narcissists so much easier.
Yes.
I know the traits, I know the tendencies. I know that they're 100% in. One of the questions that I ask, and I've taught people to ask in interviewing, is responsibility questions. Like, tell me about a situation where you had a conflict with your boss, and how does that handled? Tell me about a situation where you screwed up, and how did you handle that? What you're looking for is, can they take any sort of responsibility in their own actions? Because if they cannot, because normal people like you and I can go, all right, that was 80% Allison's fault, but I could see the 20% where I was at fault, because there's always 2 people in the dynamic, at least 2.
Yes.
That's normal. A narcissist cannot see any sort of blame on their part. It is always 100% someone else's fault. The world is happening to them.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so for instance, that individual, I had 6 different women in my office, and this is what I chalk as like one of my biggest failures and things that I regret, is that it wasn't one, it was 6 different women that complained about him harassing, not sexually, but like verbal, and to the point of, in one instance, like actual verbal abuse where it caused emotional damage. And every situation, every time I had disciplinary conversations with him, in hindsight now looking back, is it was always their fault. There was not, he could not see that he could even be 1% to blame for whatever situation was there.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Did you start to see the trend, or was it you were too close into it to see it?
No, I got to see the trend. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I got to see the trend. It was like 18 months where I started to squeeze him and start to put him into that corner, starting to box him in on what he needed to change to in order to grow. And that's where the problems really started exacerbating and him starting to act out, was when I started to box him in and trying to help him change his ways with how he treated people.
Yeah, that's incredible. And that's actually you doing something for him, but he's not wasn't able to see that. It's
No.
powerful. Well, how do you think it's affected you as a man today and your growth and what you do?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I've said this a couple times, but I was a great leader in that organization and a great leader for people. Like every time my phone rang, those preceding that day, weeks, months following, or I got a text or an email telling them about the impact that I had on their lives, like I would just break down crying because that was the impact that I wanted to have on people, but also like I'm no longer there to protect them. I'm no longer there to pour into them. So it was hurtful as well at the same time. That being said, like I am 10 times the leader in person now than I was 3 years ago when I was running that firm
How so?
because of the turmoil that I had to go through.
Hmm.
Like those pains shape us.
Yes.
Like there's if you I should say if you let them, right? I could have become very spiteful. I could have gone into it and built a different firm and gone on a complete revenge mode. And most of my people would have followed me. All the ones I wanted, all of them. And in fact, the company thought that was going to happen. And so they actually put a corporate attorney in my place instead of bringing someone from the field that was qualified, because they thought that was exactly what was going to happen. And I didn't. I didn't go in a revenge mode, and I didn't allow myself to do that. And the biggest reason I didn't stay in the industry was I didn't want that. I didn't want to put my people in that position, and I didn't want to put myself in that position to have any of those feelings where I could go for revenge.
Yes.
And so it really truly can shape you. Instead of becoming spiteful, use the lessons to actually benefit you and others,
Yes.
and especially your most loved ones. Like if you ask my kids, because they've said this numerous times now, they love my job now versus what it was before. They love who I am even more now
Yeah.
versus who I was before. And it's not that I was bad before at all. It's just that I've become that much better.
Hey, guys, how are you? Isn't that amazing? This story that we're hearing on this show is great. I want to just give a shameless plug of my book. I would really want people to have a good look at my book and to understand what it really is. I used to be ashamed to plug my book, and then I realized, how is that right? To keep the information, the 30 years of experience that I have, the 8 years of education, the trauma that I grew out of and learned how to manage and how to manage emotion, all the training I've had in neuroscience and quantum physics. How can I keep that from the public? So it's not, I used to think it was like something I should, be humble about, but being humble is silly when you're keeping things away from people that they need. So what I want to tell you about my book, and I hope that you do get it, because I think it will really help you. I've gotten a lot of tremendous feedback about my book, and that it's really, really of great value to a lot of people. And what it is, it's an interactive read, and there's inside of it, there's journal entries. So as I'm teaching and going through the book and teaching you how to create the life you want by understanding how you're wired, how your thoughts, feelings, how your words, how thoughts are things, and the neuroscience behind it, and how we are programmed from the time we're 0 to 7 years old to live a life of mediocrity or a life of poor design because of meaning that we attached to events when we were children that just became our programming. What I want to tell you is that there is a way out, and it's a simple way. It's very simple. I believe in the simplicity and the grace in healing, and that it doesn't have to be a big work. So I would love it if you'd get my book. It's a best-selling book on Amazon, and it's my first. And I encourage you to get it. It's called The Wake Up Call, an interactive read for building the life you want. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thanks so much for being on the show, and let's get back to it. I would love for you to share your wisdom on that. Like, I know that you teach leaders, like you coach leaders, right? So I have actually two different questions because I have so many, but I would love to know what you think are the most important things that you teach leaders. I know for me, managing or coaching or helping, people, not clients, but like people, is the hardest. It's the thing that probably causes me the most, I would have to say, unhappiness in my life. Any angst comes from anything like that, so where I'm leading people and maybe they don't do what they don't listen, whatever it is. Right. So I'm just
Well, you
curious
use the word management.
Yeah.
You use the word management versus
Bad word.
leading. Well, they're two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Visionaries aren't great managers.
Mm-hmm.
Which you are. You're a visionary.
Yes.
Integrators are great managers.
Yes. Can I ask you quick? I'm interrupting my interruption. So this is the thing. So I'm a visionary, right? So what I find is that if I have, let's say, as a visionary, let's say I have to oversee an integrator or integrators, right? So make sure that, it's my business, right? I have to make sure that it's running, right, properly. So I guess it would be that kind of thing, seeing, how things are being led,
If you ask my integrator,
yeah,
I don't manage her.
Well,
she manages me.
Exactly. That's the point. I love your integrator. I met her, right? Is that
Alicia,
the one?
Yeah. Alicia's awesome. And I had her at the firm, and that was the one person that I brought over with me because I needed her. Because my visionary brain is here, there, and everywhere. Most visionaries are great at managing big relationships, having great big ideas, and driving the vision for the business. Most visionaries are also terrible managers, terrible at holding people accountable, and terrible at managing processes or coming up with processes or any sort of organization. That's where we need. So Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak are the quintessential example for visionary integrator. Steve Jobs was fired from Apple originally because he was trying to do both roles.
Yes.
He was a very shitty manager. And in fact, a lot of people called him an asshole. When he came back and was visionary only, Wozniak was integrator who managed all the things and brought Steve's visions to life through all the great people that they hired.
Yes.
That's when Apple, the iPhone, everything that we know today took off. So what I teach visionary leaders mostly is your job is to set the example, be the example. Your integrator's job is to get everything to come through. Right. So a big thing with leaders, especially entrepreneurial visionaries, they don't spend enough time developing their people. And they always say, well, I don't have time. I say, none of us have time. You make the time because you got to prioritize it. Yeah. It is like you hire great people, but they're not done developing.
Yes.
None of us are. We're not. You and I aren't, and neither are they. So to the degree that we can develop them, to the degree that we can develop ourselves and actually build them into the people that your company is going to grow and grow and grow. And so everything rises and falls on leadership. That's a famous John Maxwell quote. It's so true. So I tell business owners when I'm working with them, everything great you have going on right now, it's because of you. The bad news is everything that's going on right now, issues-wise, also because of you. And so we got to continue to understand that responsibility as leaders and understand that it's our responsibility to fix these things. And usually the fixing is getting great people, right seats, so that they can love what they do, and they're great at doing it, and they own those roles 100%. And so that, but that, even if you have the best people, which I have two amazing people on my team right now that are great at what they do, they still need me to lead them. That doesn't mean I'm managing them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Alicia will manage all the other people that we bring in.
Mm-hmm.
My job is just to continue leading, creating the big vision, showing here's where we were, here's where we are, and here's where we're going. And then manage big relationships. Now, for instance, if I'm, which I am right now, in the sales seat as well as the visionary, me in the sales seat, I report to the integrator. Right. So even though I cut the checks and I'm technically the boss, in the sales seat, I'm not the boss. Alicia's the boss.
Yep.
And I report to her on my responsibilities,
I
because
love
you may
that.
have the best idea and it could be great. And the integrator goes, yeah, but if we do that right now, it's going to ruin X, Y, and Z, or we're going to lose this person because we just overloaded their plate.
Yes.
And you don't know that as the visionary,
Yep.
but the integrator does, because they're so intertwined in everything. And that's where, Jobs went wrong his first stint at Apple. Come back, Wozniak is his now voice of reason. And Woz says, great idea, Steve. We're going to have to table that till Q1 of 2025. Otherwise, we're going to lose this key person over here.
Yeah. And I love when someone has all that knowledge. It's incredible. And when they don't, then you have to kind of jump into that seat and you're not that great at it.
Yep, exactly.
Right? So there's so, like, I am so curious about your 5 bridges. Okay. So I'm kind of taking it, because I don't want to lose this conversation, the things that I really want to ask you. So I know you have 5 Bridges Farm, right? But I want to know about that, but I also want to know about those 5 bridges. That's a concept. This is your philosophy. I would love for you to share that.
So 5 Bridges Farm and 5 Bridges go together on purpose. Now, 5 Bridges Farm that we have here is, when I sold the firm, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go into coaching and speaking exclusively. And my wife looks at me, we have 4 kids, and she goes, yeah, I don't want you traveling all the time. And I said, yeah, that's fair. And so I had a field of dreams moment. If you build it, they'll come. And so I went to look for 80 to 100 acres of blank space, end up finding a place that had most of my vision already built out, and end up purchasing this place where we're able to bring teams in, bring people in, to really get them away from their Zoom screens, away from their fluorescent lights that they sit under most of the day, be able to detach, to get out of their business to work on their business, or get out of their personal lives and work inward, so they can go back to their lives as better human beings. So that's what 5 Bridges Farm is really for. And I love having people. So I did not get that. Everyone comes out here is like, how don't you live here? And I'm like, well, I'm out here every day, so I almost live here. But no, our home is about 20 minutes away. But my reasoning is I didn't get this for me. I got it for everyone.
Yeah.
I want everyone to come here, experience it, and be able to essentially transport themselves into a different world where they can actually work inward, which we don't make the time to do normally. And then they can return back to their lives as better human beings. So that's the farm. The 5 Bridges concept, I really learned this through my hardship, is so much of us focus, and I did this, right? So this was a big lesson for me. So much of us focus on our professional lives. Like, we go to college or we don't go to college, but either way, we transport ourselves out of high school and college into a career. And we're building, and we're, working on either climbing up a ladder, or we're building a business, or whatever it may be. And we're so focused on that it actually becomes an idol in our life. And so the Bible says, no idols above me, which God is speaking in that. But most people think of like Greek gods or whatever, like gods, like no other gods as idols, all right? The problem is they don't realize is that their profession can be an idol, their position can be an idol, their company can be an idol, their wife or husband can be an idol, their kids can be an idol, money can be an idol. Like, all of these things that we covet in our secular world can be idols. And so the mistake I made was my position, money, notoriety, the company I represented were all idols to me. And I didn't have this epiphany until I got kicked off the mountaintop. And God was saying, no idols above me.
Yeah.
And so I started writing down, okay, what is a righteous life? How do we actually become whole? How do we create work-life integration? There is no such thing as balance because balance indicates 50-50. So people automatically think they're failing when they think about work-life balance. The reason you think you're failing is because of the word balance. There is never going to be a day or magical time in your life where you spend 50% of your time working and 50% of your time with your family. Just doesn't happen. Even with my kids in school, they're gone from, 7:45 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon. Even if I worked a short day, it's still not a 50-50 day plus, 8 hours of sleep or whatever it may be. So what we can have though is work-life integration. And how we go about that is bridge number one is spiritual. You have to get right with God or whatever you believe, your spirit first and foremost, because we're all energy and spiritual beings. If you're not right with that, first and foremost, you're not right with anything else. So I believe in God. I believe Jesus saved us. That's my center. That doesn't have to be yours, but something spiritually. Like we've all been in the room with a loved one who's sitting in a casket or laying in a casket, and their spirit is no longer there.
Yeah.
Their body is there, their spirit is not. We know we are spiritual beings. So again, whether you believe what Allison and I believe or you believe something different, you have to be right with spirit first. So that's bridge number one. Bridge number two, I call it internal, but it's also physical. So it's being right with your mind and body. So that includes nutrition, includes physical, and it includes your mental or brain health. And making sure that those are first and foremost taken care of through your spiritual being, because without those, we can't show up to be our best self for whoever we're trying to serve that day. So for me, I'm coaching people or I'm on a podcast or I'm speaking on a stage. And if I'm not right spiritually, and if I'm not right as my best self, like physically, mentally, nutritionally, all those different things, I can't perform my best.
Right.
And if my goal is to be the best hour of someone's day, which it is, I have to be in line there.
Yes.
Number three is relationships. Bridge three is relationships. So number one with God, number two with yourself, number three with your spouse, four with your kids if you have them, and then five, everyone else. Our world, we're built for community. The Bible talks about building a community. My church's mission is to build a community to reach a community.
Yes.
So all of us are communal beings. And without having really strong relationships in our life, without pouring into those that matter most, we are not our best selves when we show up. If I have a fight with my wife and that's on my heart and mind, I'm not fully present for this conversation with Allison today.
No. Yeah.
If I'm having a strange relationship with my children and those relationships aren't sound, I can't be mentally present for the person that's in front of me or the people that are in front of me. Those relationships matter the most. And frankly, at the end of your days, your job's not going to show up on your deathbed.
That's right.
But hopefully your kids do.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully your spouse does. Hopefully your best friends do. Right? So relationships has to be number three. Bridge four is now where we get to professional. I call it your environment because it's really your environment around you. But it's bridge four is like where we spend all of our days when we don't have these priorities straight. We figure out, we focus on professional, we focus on financial, and we spend the vast majority of our working life worrying about those two things. So environment, I also include creative or creativity, your joy, your play. What do you do for fun? All that different stuff is your environment, right? But it's a big part is professional and financial. So most of us, including myself at one point, skip through bridges 1 through 3 and move right to bridge 4. And we don't even think about, oh, that's why my life is a little bit askew right now because I didn't focus on relationships or because I didn't focus on God or because I didn't focus on my own health. Like you and I have known plenty of entrepreneurs that have ended up burnt out, divorced, addicted to alcohol or drugs, a strange relationship with their kids because they devoted their whole life pouring into this business, building this business. And it's not just business owners, it's corporate CEOs, it's everyone. because we spend our days working and not focus on those other things. Or they go home drained from work and don't spend any time with their nurturing their spousal relationship or their kids' relationship. And they sit on the couch with a 12 pack of beer and watch football or whatever else may be. And they wonder 20, 30 years down the road why their life sucks.
Is that you described that shame cycle? I didn't want to derail
Yeah.
you, but it seems like it's right there. The
Yeah.
shame
So the
cycle.
shame
Yeah.
cycle, the guilt and shame cycle, I call it like this. So I saw a lot of advisors of mine that I was coaching. So we had these specific like activity requirements that would guarantee success, essentially. We had a playbook, and all you had to do was run the play and you'd be successful. So we coached that. And right. So what would happen, what I'd see is, okay, if they didn't hit their daily commitments, their, KPIs or whatever you want to call them, they would go home and they'd be beating themselves up. Be like, oh, I didn't get my 5 sets today. I didn't get 5 referrals today. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And then they'd come in the next day and be beating themselves up about, oh, because of last night and I was thinking about work, I didn't spend the time I wanted to with my kids. I barely talked to my spouse. I just sat there staring off into space. And now I'm feeling guilty about that.
Yeah.
And you just end up in this cycle. And the only way you get out of that cycle is actually do what you need to do at work so that you can go home free of mind and spend that concerted effort and time with those that you love. The shame and guilt cycle was a good segue, though, because at the end of the day, no one wants to go through life shaming and guilting themselves when in reality, you're in full control of it. Like you just, okay, if that advisor need to get 5 sets per day and 5 referrals per day, and they just did that, and they're able to go home and be like, man, I won today. Now I can be free to be with my family. That's all they had to do to break the cycle. Then I'm sitting there beating my head against the desk going, break the cycle. Like just break it. It's in your
Yes.
control. So then you can go home and like be the champion dad or mom that you want to be. So that's it. But to finish off the 5 bridges, you got to do the first 4 in order correctly to do bridge 5. Bridge 5 is your legacy. It's like, how do you want to be remembered? How do you want people to talk about you? What mark do you want to leave in this world? Right. So that's bridge 5. And then what I firmly believe with all these bridges is you typically need a guide. Right. So if we think about, the movies, whether it's Indiana Jones or whatever, and you got this, I think about these bridges as not sturdy bridges that you're just walking across. I think of these bridges as like old cricket or like rickety, swaying bridges that you need a hand or a guide to help you across. So whether it's coaching, mentoring, masterminds, relationships again to help you guide you across. Someone that's been down the path before and is on their way back to say, hey, that board right there, that's about to break. Don't step on that one. Right. So I think there's a good guide that can help you across that. But all 4 of those bridges need to be done in the right order for us to really, truly leave that legacy that we want to leave behind.
You referred to yourself as a hope dealer.
Yeah.
And I would love for you to explain that because it's a cool way of explaining you. So I'd love to hear that.
So what I found is it sounds kind of kooky, right? Like, so before everything came crashing down for me, people wanted to be around me because of my success and at such a young age. And that's what I found out is like who was real and who wasn't. What I found out after I came crashing down and in the pit of despair and climbing my way back out is people were attracted to me because I had gone through a great deal of pain and figured out a way to climb out of that pit and get my way back up to the mountaintop. And so there's all sorts of pain in people's lives, whether it's divorce, loss of a loved one, loss of a child, battling alcoholism, all the different battles that we face as human beings. Is what I realized is that because I had fallen down so hard and got myself to a point through a lot of prayer and reflection, physical action, and transforming my mind and body again, that I was giving people hope that they can do the same. When you're at the top of the mountain, whether you've made it to a pro athlete level, whether you've made it to CEO level, or you're an entrepreneur, whatever it may be, people will be attracted to that success.
Yeah.
But what really resonates with people is people that aren't perfect.
Oh, yeah.
People that actually, because no one's perfect, but people can portray that, especially in the social media age.
I could talk to you for like, well, weeks, probably, like months of surgery on me. But anyhow, I really want to thank you for being here. I would like you to share the ways in which people can find you. They can get your expertise. Didn't you write a book?
Almost. I wrote it and then realized I was going to put it out for free, and I had some guidance and mentorship, those guides that are like, Josh, this is actually way more, this is needed. Like, this should be a real book. I was going to put it out as a white paper. So I'm in the process of writing it, and I'm going to give much more elaboration to the 5 bridges and the stories that have helped mold who I am today. So it's in process. Hopefully that'll be released next year.
Do you let people come and like rent your farm for like events and stuff? Do you want to tell people about what you do, or?
Yeah. So the ways you can get a hold of me, at Josh Kosnick on all social medias. There's not many Josh Kosnicks that I know, so the SEO is pretty good. 5bridgesfarm.com. It's 5 spelled out, so FIVE bridgesfarm.com is where you can look at the space. So whether you want to utilize me in leadership or those sessions, or if you just want the space to come host your leadership team, I'm game for either. I got it, like I said before, to share with the world. Yeah, my website, joshkosnick.com. Book me to speak, or want to talk about leadership, or if you just need some hope, reach out. I'm always in my, like, I control my DMs, no one else does. So you can get a hold of me pretty seamlessly.
So you also do trainings for leaders at your farm. Is that also true?
EOS implementation, leadership meetings, sales and recruiting, whatever the need is. What I found is most business owners struggle with 2 main things. Then there's like 136 issues underneath those, but the 2 main ones are leadership development or human development, and the other is systems and processes to help them grow. So typically I start a conversation as like, what are the bigger issues going on right now that we can help tackle and solve? And we'll dive down one of those 2 paths first.
Well, I can say that you are a hope dealer, and I'm very, very honored to know you and know you as a friend. And I might be coming to your farm at the end of September to hear that speaker too. I really, really appreciate you. And it's a wrap. Guys, thank you so much for listening to the show. I just want to say to you that we are all together a part of the Mission Awake, a mission that's going to stop the mediocrity that's plaguing all of us. So if you got something here today, I ask that you would be a part of this mission and you'd share it with whoever you can. Take a screenshot of the show and share it on your Instagram. If you are looking for me, you can find me on social media platform Instagram, Allison Answers, or Lager Counseling Services. And give us a review and subscribe if you could to YouTube, Allison Answers. That's where you're going to get a lot of content. I drop stuff every day, goofy stuff, all different kinds of stuff. 5-minute videos that just get you moving in your day. Have a great week. See you next time.